Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something really ancient, a teaching that claims reality operates in a very specific way.
Hmm,
We're exploring an excerpt from a Dharma talk given way back in 1954, focusing on the Dhammayama Sutta.
that's right. And it's interesting because it's not just the sutta itself, it's the sutta as understood and explained by this particular speaker. So you get this blend of canonical texts and, well, a specific interpretive tradition.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive, tailored just for you, is to really unpack the core ideas here. We want to look at what this talk says about dhatu and dhamma, these fundamental concepts,
Uh-huh.
and explore the universal characteristics of existence as they're laid out here, plus the speaker's, well, kind of unique perspective on spiritual development and the structure of reality.
Yeah, paying close attention to those Pali terms, but also how the speaker explains them.
Right. So let's dive in. The talk begins, as many do, with Ivami Sutta, thus have I heard. What does that tell us straight away?
Well, it's the classic marker, isn't it? It signals this is presented as a recollection, traditionally Ananda, remembering the Buddha's words. It grounds the teaching in a specific time and place.
And the talk gives that location.
It does. Eka samaya phagava savatya vihadi jetavan and atapichkasa arame. Eka samaya bhagava savati jetavan and atapichkasa vichara esa osmi. So at one time, the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi in Jeta Grove. It anchors these potentially timeless truths to a real-world setting.
Okay. And the core message, the big idea from the Dhammaniyama Sutta itself, comes up early. What is it?
It's really profound. The speaker highlights this passage. Upabhava bhikkhava tathagata edabataragata efas that databhakapa Dhammaniyama upadabim upadava bhikkhava tathagata tadira fasaiza Dhammaniyama Dhamma.
Okay, break that down for us.
It basically means whether enlightened beings, Buddhas, arise in the world or whether they don't arise, this fundamental nature, this dhatu, this reality, this Dhamma, it just stands. It's established. It operates according to its own inherent order.
Wow. So the universe has rules, laws, a fundamental reality, and Buddhas don't create them.
Exactly. They discover them, they realize them, and then they teach them. But the underlying reality, the dhatu and Dhamma, they're constant, established, fixed. They're just how things are.
That's a huge foundational point. Reality isn't dependent on our awareness of it in that sense.
Precisely.
Okay, so the talk establishes that, and then it connects this huge idea directly to something maybe more familiar, the universal characteristics of existence.
Right. It takes this high-level principle and immediately grounds it in lived experience.
Yeah.
The sutta, as the speaker explains it, links this eternal nature of Dhammadhatu to the three marks.
Sure.
First up, sabisagara anicca.
Sabe sashsis anitāsasas.
All conditioned things are impermanent. We hear this one a lot. What does sakkara really cover here? The talk defines it pretty broadly. Sakkara are things put together, or compounded, anything that arises from causes and conditions. So think. Everything.
Like physical objects, thoughts.
Yes. Blades of grass, mountains, buildings, our bodies, our thoughts, feelings, perceptions, anything that comes into being and will eventually cease. Anything conditional.
Okay.
The source even distinguishes types. Upadana upadana things with mind or life, like us animals, and an upadanakara, an upadana kings, without mind or life. Trees, rocks, weather patterns, you name it.
So living, non-living, doesn't matter if it's conditioned, it's sakkara.
Correct. And there's also a classification by quality, ethical quality.
Yeah.
You have sankhara, like wholesome formations, good karma, positive mental states. Punyapasakara, the opposite, unwholesome. And anajafali, these are imperturbable formations, usually referring to very deep states of meditation, like in the formless realms.
Wow. Okay, so even those super deep meditative states are still sankhara.
According to this classification, yes, because they arise from conditions and aren't permanent in the ultimate sense. The key point is all these types of sankhara are anicca, impermanent. And the Buddha didn't just realize this, abhisambhujati, he taught it exhaustively. The text lists all the ways. Achikati, deseti panyapeti, patisobeti, vivarati, papati, lutana sankarati. Astarokari, deseti patani, fedi, patapeti, patisapranasapraviti, tells, shows, designates, establishes, reveals, analyzes, makes clear.
He really hammered it home then. No ambiguity.
Not at all.
And flowing from impermanence comes the next one. Suffering or unsatisfactoriness.
Exactly. Sabi sankhara dukkha, sabi sasankhara. All conditioned things are dukkha. Because they're impermanent, because they change, they can't provide lasting security or happiness.
Right. If you cling to something changing, you're going to suffer when it inevitably changes.
That's the core of it. The source uses simple examples. Losing money hurts because money is impermanent. Or how aging feels. A young person might not see it as suffering, but someone actually experiencing it feels that inherent dukkha. It's woven into the fabric of conditioned existence.
Okay, anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering.
Hmm.
Applied to sankhara, conditioned things. That makes a kind of tough sense. But the third one, anattā, not self, feels like the trickiest.
It often is, and this is where the source talk highlights a crucial detail from the Sutta's wording. It doesn't just say all conditioned things are not self. It says sabbe dhamma anattā. Sabbe dhamma says all phenomena are not self.
Dhamma, not sankhara. What's the difference there?
The Dhamma is a broader term. It can encompass all phenomena, potentially including both conditioned sankhara and unconditioned asankhata realities. So it's not just saying your body, thoughts, feelings aren't a permanent self.
It's saying everything lacks a permanent, independent self, even fundamental reality.
According to this speaker's interpretation, yes. Even the dhatu and dhamma we talked about earlier, those fundamental elements or truths, they too are anattā. They lack inherent, independent self-existence.
Whoa.
Yeah. The speaker points out that people often realize things are impermanent and suffering, and then they start looking for a real self somewhere else, maybe in some ultimate ground of being.
Like an eternal soul or essence.
Exactly. And sabbe dhamma anattā directly addresses that search. It says, nope, you won't find a permanent, independent self anywhere, not even in the most fundamental constituents of reality. It's a radical statement about the nature of everything.
That really shifts the goalposts for liberation, doesn't it? It's not about finding a true self, but seeing the absence of self everywhere.
That's the implication highlighted here, yes.
Okay, so after laying out the Sutta's core ideas and the three characteristics, the talk then gets into a more detailed explanation of dhatu and dhamma. It sounds like the speaker had a very specific way of visualizing them.
Yes, this is where it becomes quite specific to this speaker's teaching. They describe dhatu and dhamma not just abstractly, but as having a true form, rupa phansanathan. And this form is, well, spherical, like luminous spheres or douche, as the Thai word is given.
Spheres, glowing spheres representing fundamental reality. That's vivid.
It is. And the speaker emphasizes they're totally intertwined, inseparable. Like body and mind, one implies the other. You can't have one without the other.
Okay, inseparable spheres. And there was something about a base.
Right. An analogy using the Thai word bay, meaning base or cushion. The idea is that existence needs a base. For ordinary beings, that's the lokayatana, the world base, like the different realms. But for those who reach nibbana, the base is the dhammayatana, the Dhamma base, which the speaker identifies with nibbana. And within this framework, dhatu is the base for Dhamma, and Dhamma is the base for dhatu. They mutually support each other.
So the spheres and the base idea work together to describe this fundamental, interdependent reality. It's quite a system.
It is. And then the speaker categorizes these spherical dhatu and dhamma into different levels.
Okay. What are the levels?
There are three main tiers presented. First, sankhata dhatu and sankhata dhamma. Sankhata dhisu sankhata dhamma. Conditioned elements, conditioned truths. This, according to the talk, relates to the human body, the lower realms, basically. The reality bound by causes and conditions, impermanence, suffering. The stuff we usually experience.
Got it. The mundane level.
Then second, asankhata dhatu and asankhata dhamma. Asankhata dhatu is asankhata dhamma. Unconditioned elements, unconditioned truths. These are linked to the Dhammakaya, the Dhammakayas, the Dhamma body or spiritual body that's realized through practice. Specifically from the initial stages, like cultivating wholesome qualities, kusala dhamma, up to the level of the anagomi, the non-returner.
So this is a higher, more purified state.
Yes, described as pure like glass, not subject to the same kind of gross conditioning. It represents significant spiritual progress, freedom from coarser defilements. But, and this is stressed, it's not the final goal. Still asankhata, not fully liberated.
Okay, so there's conditioned, unconditioned. What's the ultimate level then?
That's the third. Viragadhatu and Viragadhamma. Viragadhatu-Viragadhamma. Viraga means dispassion or fading away of defilements. These are the dispassionate, liberated elements and truths. The talk calls this the most excellent level, Dhammakayati. This is associated with the Arahant Dhammakaya.
The fully enlightened state.
Right. This represents samuchadavimutti, liberation, by cutting off eradicating the roots of suffering completely. It's distinguished from temporary or suppressive forms of release, tadaga vimutti, vikambana vimutti. Viraga is the end of greed, hatred, and delusion.
So a three-tiered reality. Conditioned, sankhata, unconditioned path progress, asankhata, and ultimate liberation, viraga. That's quite a map. And you mentioned the Dhammakaya, the spiritual body. The talk links these levels to different bodies.
Yes, the speaker describes a progression of bodies: human, celestial deva, Brahma bodies, and then these increasingly refined Dhammakaya levels corresponding to the stages of enlightenment: Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant.
And each body has one of those spheres.
Exactly. Each state of being or attainment is said to have a central Dhamma sphere. The talk even gives specific sizes and locations, especially for the Dhammakaya spheres, like the human one being clear as a hen's egg yolk at the center. And the higher Dhammakaya spheres get progressively larger, measured in wa, that Thai unit about 2 meters. The exact measurements are specific to this teaching, but the core concept is this. Spiritual progress involves realizing these increasingly refined spiritual bodies, each centered on a purer, larger Dhamma sphere.
It paints a very detailed picture of inner transformation, almost like unlocking levels in a game, but profoundly spiritual.
You could see it that way. And interestingly, the speaker identifies these Dhammakaya levels from the entry point, Kusaladhamma, up to Arahant as the Tua Jing Tua Duchi.
Meaning?
The true self, or real self, realized through liberation, vimutti. And they explicitly contrast this with the Tuadoi Samuti, Nuadoi Samuti, the self by convention, the ordinary, impermanent self tied to the human body.
So in this view, liberation isn't just about realizing no self, but realizing this true self via the Dhammakaya. That sounds potentially controversial, or at least different from some other interpretations of anattā.
It certainly presents a specific perspective on what is realized at liberation, framing it in terms of these Dhammakaya realities.
Okay, so we have this intricate map, timeless truths, characteristics, levels of reality linked to bodies and spheres. What's the practical takeaway for someone listening? How does one actually get to that Viragadhatu-Dhamma level?
Well, the foundation is wisdom. Really understanding anicca, dukkha, anattā, especially that sabadhamanatta point, understanding this map itself, is part of the past presented.
Right.
But the method emphasized is profound letting go. The speaker says basically, don't love or worry about anything. Detach from life, detach from the mind itself.
How? What's the practice?
The key practice described is achieving deep inner stillness or stopping. The Thai phrases used are jayut, tam tai najut, make the mind stop. And even more pointedly, yutai yet jupnajut, stop in stopping.
Stop in stopping, like a recursive stillness.
It suggests a deepening, a settling into stillness that itself becomes the object, perhaps. A profound cessation of mental activity. This inner quiet, this stopping, is presented as the direct road. It's how you purify the mind, how you access and experience these Dhamma spheres within the kayas, and ultimately how you follow the path to the final viraga state. The speaker mentions their own ongoing effort with this practice.
So understanding the map, letting go of everything, and cultivating this radical stillness, that's the path outlined here.
That's the essence of the practical advice given in the talk.
Okay, this has been quite a journey through this 1954 talk. We started with that fundamental idea of reality's laws existing independently, whether Buddhas are here or not.
The Hidava said that too.
Then we covered the universal characteristics, impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha, applying to all conditioned things, sankhara.
And the really crucial one, anattā, not self, applying to all phenomena, Dhamma, which is a key point in this interpretation.
Right. Then we got into the speaker's specific view, Dhatu and Dhamma as these luminous, inseparable spheres, acting as a base for existence.
And the classification into 3 levels: the conditioned world, sankhata, the unconditioned stages of the path, asankhata, and the ultimate liberated state, viraga.
Linked to those different bodies, the kayas, culminating in the Arahant Dhammakaya, with its associated sphere described here as the true self realized through liberation.
And the path to get there. Understanding all this, radical detachment, and achieving that deep inner stillness, that yet not yet.
It's definitely a unique and highly detailed framework. It gives you, the listener, a specific lens, a particular map for viewing reality and the path. Lots to mull over.
Absolutely. It's a rich, if challenging, perspective drawn from this specific teaching.
And here's a final thought to leave you with, something the speaker touches upon. They suggest that reaching this ultimate Viragadhatu-Viragadhamma isn't just about personal peace. It could potentially ripple outwards, contributing to a world where conflict stops, where people live in peace and abundance, almost like Devas, like Nibbana.
Hmm. A connection between inner liberation and outer transformation.
Yeah. This idea that profound individual realization could actually help reshape collective reality in such a positive way, that's a powerful vision to consider. Can inner peace truly change the world on that scale? Something to think about.
A very hopeful thought indeed.
Thank you for bringing these sources and joining us for this deep dive. We hope this exploration sparks further reflection for you.